Yep.
Yes.
Sweet. Awesome. So yeah, let's get started. Climate change 101. So let's start with first a very basic science lesson. You're asking me, why do I need to know this? You know, leave the science to the scientists. I'm not a scientist. I'm a leader. Well, for several reasons. One reason is that climate change will definitely affect your life. As a young person, you're more likely to witness more and more climate change related impacts surrounding your life and the lives of people around you. So it's really important to understand what's happening and what's going on. Second, there's a lot of misinformation out there about climate change. There's a lot of people with a vested interest in, selling you false solutions or manipulating data or trying to convince you that things aren't as bad as they are. And the only way to protect yourself against this kind of misinformation is to have a good, strong, intuitive understanding of the science of climate change. Another reason why this is so important is that climate change will influence the other sustainable development goals. As young leaders in this program, you are, of course, interested in dealing with the sustainable development goals, and it has become more and more apparent that without dealing with the climate change crisis, there is no way that the SDGs will be achieved. And lastly, as future leaders of the world, it's very important to build critical thinking skills. This is one of the most important characteristics of a good leader, is the ability to think independently using reason and logic as the basis for judgments and decisions. So let's begin with the most basic thing. What is a greenhouse gas? I'm sure you've heard of it, especially in the context of climate change. But what exactly are they? Well, let's first have a little bit of a review on what electromagnetic waves are. These are waves that you might better known as light, in the sense it means about the same thing. Basically, electromagnetic waves, they propagate throughout all of space with two components, one electric component and one magnetic component. And they're governed by the 4 Maxwell's equations, which I don't want to scare you guys by showing it here. And in essence, there are different types, there are different wavelengths of this electromagnetic waves. The shorter wavelengths have higher frequency and therefore higher energy, while longer wavelengths have lower frequency and lower energy. I suppose the most familiar you are, the segment that's most familiar to you would be the visible light spectrum, which ranges between 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers, which is violet. And that's basically all the colors that you see in the world around you. That's the electromagnetic waves hitting your eyes and your brain interpreting them as colors. So the sun is a star that radiates light, and when it gets to Earth, it's light that is between 300 nanometers to 2500 nanometers, which is basically between ultraviolet light and infrared light. 9% is ultraviolet, 46% is visible light, and another 45% is on the infrared light spectrum. Of course, you can't see ultraviolet light, nor can you see infrared light. And when it hits the Earth, it gets absorbed and reflected in these various different stages. First, it gets absorbed by the atmosphere, and it gets absorbed by the clouds, and absorbed by the ground, by trees, by the oceans, and it's also reflected off the Earth's surface. And on its way out, it's again absorbed by the clouds and by the atmosphere. And about 30% of solar energy ends up in outer space by the end of all this. So you might be asking, what's in the Earth's atmosphere that's absorbing this solar radiation? And our atmosphere is composed of gases. Primarily, it's composed of nitrogen gas, which makes up about 78% of our atmosphere. Oxygen takes up about 21%. About 0.9% is argon gas. It's a single atom molecule. It's a single atom gas. But what about those 0.1%? What's that comprised of? Well, it's comprised of more complex molecules made up of 3 or more atoms. This is the most famous example of one such molecule, the carbon dioxide. Keep in mind, notice the shape of this. It's a linear shape, and it's 1 carbon and 2 oxygen atoms. Here are some other of these complex molecules. Methane, which is kind of a tetrahedral shape. Nitrous oxide, which is also 3 molecules, but they're connected in a very asymmetric manner. Dihydrogen monoxide, which you guys know as water. Water vapor is actually a very potent greenhouse gas. And notice the shape, it's bent in a particular way. And this funky little guy here on the top right is what's called a fluorinated gas. It's an example of a fluorinated gas. This one in particular is carbohydrofluoride gas. It's very complex in its structure and shape. And basically, it all comes down to how these molecules vibrate when infrared light hits it. And again, as a reminder, 45% of solar radiation is infrared light. So when infrared light hits these molecules, they bend and stretch in various different ways, symmetrically or asymmetrically. And when they bend in these different ways, it creates what's called a dipole moment. And this dipole moment gives the molecules more energy. They start hitting other molecules in the atmosphere. And Chemistry 101, this is basically what heat is. It's inside a closed system, the more excited molecules are in a closed system, the more kinetic energy the system has, and therefore that's what heat is, essentially. And so we do have our atmosphere, which is this layer above the Earth's surface, comprised of these molecules, and that's trapping the heat, in essence, from the solar radiation. And this is called the greenhouse effect. And of course, these molecules, the ones that have more than 3 atoms in them, they're called the greenhouse gases. So let's take a second. For 1 minute, just tell me where you think greenhouse gases come from. I guess you could type in the chat, or give you guys about 1 minute to think. Animal agriculture, good. Industrial processes, animal agriculture. Okay. Definitely, coal plants, transportation, of course. Yes, a lot of greenhouse gases do come naturally from the earth. Coal mining, yes. Okay, so I guess you guys do have a pretty good understanding of where the greenhouse gases do come from. Let's take a look at things that we've missed maybe. Here. So again, yes, definitely there are natural sources of greenhouse gases, such as volcanic activity, produces a lot of methane and carbon dioxide. Life, you know, even just breathing as a life form, that's us outputting carbon dioxide. There's water vapors. But in essence, these natural sources are kind of balanced out by natural carbon sinks. The ocean absorbs a lot of it. Trees absorb a lot of carbon dioxide. And it's taken billions of years for our climate system to stabilize like this. But what we're concerned with now is what's called anthropogenic or man-made greenhouse gases. This is, yes, this is coming from ocean production, oil production, sorry, forest building, burning. When we're burning forests, anytime we're burning anything that's carbon-based, trees are definitely carbon-based. It outputs carbon dioxide and it goes into the atmosphere. Transportation, of course, we're burning natural gases or coal when we produce energy. Animal agriculture comes in many various different forms. When we're raising livestock, these livestock called ruminant animals, they have four stomachs, cows, for example, and they're big animals and they produce a lot of methane gas. When we're trying to raise these animals, we're clearing land, we're eliminating a lot of carbon sinks. Industrial processes, particularly those more complex gas chemicals like the fluorinated carbons, that comes from industry mainly. Primarily from refrigeration. And so this pie chart kind of gives you a pretty good idea of where all of these greenhouse gases are coming from. Of course, the main culprit is energy, our constant need to consume and to produce energy. The burning of natural gases, of fossil fuels, of coal, to produce the energy and electricity that we use every day. That is the main culprit of greenhouse gas emissions. 18% comes from agriculture, which we explained earlier. 3% comes from waste. You know, just leaving waste in these landfills, it naturally emits methane gas. And industry. So this is the Keeling curve, named after David Keeling from UC San Diego Scripps Institute for Oceanography. And he was the first guy to start measuring the carbon concentration, the concentration of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere in both Antarctica and in Hawaii, Mauna Loa. As you can see from this curve, it's a constant linear trend upward. When he started in the 1950s, 1958 to be precise, we were at 310 to 320 parts per million carbon dioxide concentration. To 2005, when we hit 380. Today, we are at about 410 parts per million. Here's an overview of some of the other greenhouse gases. Carbon dioxide is actually the weakest of the greenhouse gases, but it is indeed the most abundant in our atmosphere. There's also methane, nitrous oxide, and the fluorinated gases. So can you tell me about, like, what are you observing from this chart? What are some observations that you can see here? Feel free to type in the chat. Any ideas? Anyone? Well, yes, there are an incredible amount of gases released, especially these really high global warming potential gases like the fluorinated gases. But since they're in parts per trillion, luckily there's not too much in our atmosphere and doesn't contribute too much, but it is contributing. Ellen, good. CO2 stays in the atmosphere for a very long time. Yes, Kelly. Before industrialization, of course, there's no output of these gases now because of industrialization, particularly refrigeration. We're having more and more fluorinated gases in our atmosphere. Yeah, basically what Alan said was spot on. We keep hearing these commitments to decarbonize, to stop emitting gases. But it is very important to realize that even if we completely stop, theoretically speaking, we completely stop emitting carbon dioxide, it's still going to stay in our atmosphere for the next several centuries, if not millennia. So it's not enough to just stop emitting. Another thing you can realize is methane gas, even though it has a huge global warming potential, it stays in the atmosphere for only 12 years. What is the cutoff year for pre-industrial? So basically, the Industrial Revolution started in the 1800s, I believe 1860s, 1870s. Basically, before the Industrial Revolution is the cutoff year for pre-industrial. I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what year. But yeah, it's before the 1880s, I think. Yeah. This is the Mann-Bradley curve, also known as the hockey stick curve, named after its shape, which is a hockey stick shape. Thanks, Yishan. 1850 to 1900. Yeah. Anyway, Mann-Bradley curve, developed by Michael Mann and Raymond Bradley. They studied tree rings and gases that are trapped in ice. They came out with this graph of temperature trends in the last 1,000 years. And what you can see here clearly is that right around the time of the Industrial Revolution, our average global temperatures have skyrocketed. By the late 1990s, early 2000s, we were hitting 0.5 degrees Celsius above above pre-industrial age temperatures as a global average, which is huge. And guess where we're at now? We're at 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, which, as you can see from this curve here, which basically definitively shows that carbon dioxide concentration and temperature are, they go hand in hand. They're pretty much directly correlated. And, yeah, as you can see in the past 800,000 years, you know, our CO2 concentrations have skyrocketed just in the past few years. So now you're asking, what's the big deal? It's only 1 degree Celsius. As an aside, let me first talk about the International Panel on Climate Change, which touched a little bit on it. It's an international body established in 1988 by the World Meteorological Organization and the UN Environment Program. And basically, the purpose of this body is to produce the science of climate change, produce the assessment of the current status of climate change. They don't conduct original research. There's no funding for that. But they publish, it's a consolidation of all the published papers that's come out during that assessment period. And they come out with these very important assessment reports published every 5 to 6 years, usually in 3 parts. First part being the science, the second part being the impacts of climate change, impacts and vulnerabilities, and the third part being the mitigation of climate change. How do we mitigate? What are the pathways of mitigation? And these reports are instrumentally pretty much the only scientific report that the global negotiations on climate change use. And later on, Dr. Peng will talk a little bit more about these reports and the climate negotiations. They've also published a few special reports in the last few years, the biggest one being the special report on 1.5 degrees C. They also published the climate and land and the ocean and cryosphere reports. And we're on the 6th assessment report now. The 6th assessment report came out this year, 2022. In the 3 parts as usual. And I'm going to reference a lot on the 2nd working group of this report, which again is on the impacts of climate change, impacts and vulnerabilities. And here are some facts and figures. You know, as you can see, it's a collaboration between hundreds of authors, scientists, experts from all around the world. Thousands of references cited, even more thousands of experts, reviewers, giving comments and giving inputs to this report. And what's resulted is a 3,600 page document just on this part of the assessment report. And it's a culmination of 5 years of work during the pandemic era, which I know that's caused a lot of issues producing this report. So going back to, you know, what a difference 1 degree makes. The Ipcc Working Group 2 report has this pretty comprehensive overview, gives you a really good image of exactly the differences between 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels to 2 degrees to 3 degrees. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of this, but as you can see, difference between 3 degrees and 1.5 degrees is the loss of 2 times as many species to extinction. 300 million more people affected by drought. At 3 degrees, basically all of Mediterranean Europe will be on fire. Global sea level rises, and coral reefs will be essentially gone by the time we hit 2 degrees Celsius. And keep in mind, we are currently at 1.1 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So, and I'm sure all of you have, experienced yourself and noticed on, on the news, or even personally experienced more and more effects of climate change. We're seeing floods and storms displacing millions of people in the past few years. We're seeing more water insecurity. Half the global population faces water insecurity, including here where I am at, California. We're going through yet another drought. About 40% of the people, world's population, live in places that are highly vulnerable to climate change. And most of these people, they're living in like developing countries and coastal areas, small island developing states. One of the conclusions of the Working Group 2 report is that the most vulnerable people who contribute the least to climate change are the most impacted. Primarily those that are living in the global south, which include Africa, Southern Asia, Central and South America, and some of the small islands. We're seeing record-breaking events year after year. Just last year alone, the past 7 years were the warmest on record, according to the WMO. Sea level is at an all-time high. We're raising 4.5 millimeters every year on average. The hole in the ozone layer over the Antarctic, which was actually closing after global negotiations banned CFCs, well, they're opening back up again, and it's expanded to 24 million kilometers squared. For the first time ever, we're seeing rain at Greenland's highest point, which is usually frozen. Last year we had Hurricane Idai, which hit record-breaking winds, 240 kilometers per hour. And we're seeing a trend where we're seeing more Category 4, Category 5 hurricanes and tropical storms compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago. And last year, there was a record flooding in Europe, which resulted in the deaths of almost 200 people. So these are very devastating consequences. So you're asking, well, what are the effects of climate change? Natural disasters, again, we're seeing so many droughts and floods. Rising sea levels, why are the sea levels rising? Well, because heat expands water, and the warmer the oceans are, the more the sea levels rise. Record-breaking heat waves, historic blizzards. What you're saying, if you're asking if the climate's warming, how are we getting so much colder weather? Well, because as temperatures rise, we get more and more precipitation in our atmosphere, more moisture. And since hot air is lighter than cold air, the cold air freezes the precipitation and comes back down to Earth in form of snow and blizzards. We're seeing more and more tropical storms that are severe. So climate change doesn't necessarily increase the frequency of tropical storms, but they're making them more severe. So what usually would be category 2 or category 3 hurricanes, for example, would become category 4, category 5 hurricanes. Why? Because the oceans are warmer, and tropical storms get their energy from warm oceans, from the heat of the oceans. So the warmer the oceans, the more energy these storms have. We have also what's called the blue ocean event. We're losing our Arctic ice. This is often overlooked because who lives in the Arctic, right? But as you can see, in 1979, compared to 2020, how much ice we are losing in the Arctic region. And this is tremendous in that we're losing what's called this Earth's albedo. And the albedo is the ability for the Earth to reflect solar radiation back out into outer space. The brighter the surface, the more radiation is reflected. And by losing our ice, we're losing the Earth's ability to reflect solar radiation, to reflect a lot of this heat. And that really results in more heating. And the blue ocean event is, it's what they call it the blue ocean event when we hit about 1 million kilometers squared of ice left in the Arctic. And one of the oversights of the Ipcc reports is they use computer simulation models to predict we'll see a blue ocean event in 2050. But me knowing personally some Arctic ice scientists, people like Peter Wadham, who wrote the famous book, A Farewell to Ice. He himself has been to the Arctic, and for a living, he measures the thickness of the ice. And according to him, we'll be seeing the blue ocean event within the next few years. So very, very soon. Another impact of climate change is the loss of biodiversity and ecosystems. Again, with climate change at 1.5 degrees Celsius, we'll lose about 14% of our terrestrial and freshwater species. And this number rises to 18% when we hit 2 degrees Celsius, and about 29% when we hit 3 degrees Celsius. So we'll be losing a lot of animal species. We'll be losing ecosystems such as the forests, which are, when they become dry, they become fuel for wildfires. And that, that creates this feedback where where the wildfires would burn wood and trees, which would output more carbon dioxide and create this loop. Where our oceans, which are our biggest carbon sinks, absorbing most of our carbon dioxide emissions, the more carbon dioxide our ocean absorbs, the more acidic it becomes. And as ocean acidification is a huge problem, especially for all marine life, and especially for coral reefs, which are disappearing at record levels. They're almost gone at this point. And also with ocean acidification, there would be less of an ability for our oceans to absorb the carbon emissions. Climate change isn't just affecting nature, it's affecting human health and livelihoods as well. By the year 2100, half more than half of the global population would be exposed to life-threatening climate conditions like extreme heat and humidity. Our food systems would collapse as it would become more and more difficult to grow food, and especially to raise livestock. As you all know, raising livestock is very resource intensive, and the ability to grow our foods would be more and more difficult. So it would result in millions more people going hungry. People living in uninhabitable lands ruined by flooding or other disastrous climate events, they'll be forced to move, forced to migrate, become what's called climate refugees, to move closer inland. And as a result of loss of livelihoods, mental health would become an issue. And last but not least, we'll see increased frequency of epidemics and pandemics. First with vector-borne diseases, which are mosquitoes, which typically thrive in tropical climates and conditions. As the global temperatures rise, there'll be more and more areas where these mosquitoes would thrive. We're seeing mosquitoes such as the Aedes species of mosquitoes that are typically in southern South America and Africa. They're moving upwards. We're seeing them here in California now. And that would lead to more what's called vector-borne diseases, basically diseases transmitted by mosquitoes, diseases such as yellow fever, dengue, chikungunya, and Zika. These are all examples of vector-borne diseases. Malaria, last but not least. So we'll be seeing more of that. Another thing we'll be seeing more of is zoonosis. So as animals and wildlife lose their habitats, they'll be forced to move closer and closer to civilization. And the more encounters of wildlife to civilization, the more of an increased chance we'll see different viruses that are transmitted from animal to human. About 75% of all infectious diseases, by the way, are what's called zoonotic diseases, animal to human transmitted diseases. Things like COVID-19 is an animal to human transmitted disease. Ebola, monkeypox, these are all animal to transmitted infectious diseases. So we'll be seeing like a higher likelihood of more of these pandemics that we're experiencing now with COVID. And with the impacts of the human livelihoods, we'll be seeing impacts on society as well. There will be political consequences, especially with the coming refugee crisis, as more and more people start being forced to migrate. There will be more risk of war. For example, the Arab Spring, it was actually caused by climate change. It was because a drought caused food prices to soar astronomically, causing an uprising and leading to civil war in the Middle East. And that was because of climate change. And we'll be seeing more and more of these stressors coming out. There will be economic consequences as well as systems start becoming disrupted. For example, our food systems. You could see that with, you could see a preview of that with the COVID crisis. If you're living in the global north, you might not feel it as much, but in other parts of the world, especially in Africa, it's very, very difficult to produce food, especially with, in Africa, they had this locust situation, which is also climate driven, which destroyed a majority of their food production. And also coastal cities, which are primarily the main economic hubs of the world, they'll be, of course, exposed to rising sea levels and tropical storms, more severe tropical storms. And here's just a bit of a look at the top 10 cities at risk of sea level rise by 2070. Just a bit of the look of the economic consequences of climate change. And last but not least, climate change will cause chaos. And what chaos means by definition, it's when an unstable, it's when a stable system becomes unstable, and it becomes we are unable to control it through processes like feedback. For example, what I explained earlier, less sea ice means less albedo to reflect sunlight, which means more warming. Less trees and vegetation, leading to less carbon sinks to absorb the carbon dioxide. Warmer oceans means more water vapor, and as I mentioned before, water vapor is a very potent greenhouse gas as well. More acidic oceans, the less ability to absorb carbon dioxide. There's also the methane emergency in the Arctic, where there's tons and tons, millions of tons of methane trapped inside permafrost. And this permafrost is actually starting to melt. And when the permafrost melts, it releases all of that methane trapped in the ice, and it could raise global temperature to as much as 7 degrees, if not higher. So it's definitely chaotic, to say the least. And I'll conclude by saying it doesn't need to be this way. Our destiny is not set in stone. There are things that we can do to help prevent it, prevent the worst worst effects of climate change. Of course, there are individual actions such as having less kids, taking less flights, driving less, using renewable energy, or going vegan. But there are also other things you could do, such as raising awareness to the situation. You could take political action by voting in leaders that aren't afraid to take necessary action for our survival. And in the next lecture, Dr. Peng will talk more about on the global side, what are these global climate negotiations? What are these climate talks? And how is the global community going to deal with the climate crisis? Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Is there any questions? Do we have time for questions?
Thank you so much, Brother Jimmy. This was a really wonderful class. I learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else did as well. Let's take a question or two. If anybody has any questions, you can either just unmute yourselves and ask, or you can post in the chat. Okay, if there are no questions, then let us take a break for 10 minutes, and we'll see you all back at 9:30. Take care and see you in a little bit. Right, Professor Peng, maybe in the meantime, we can just, I saw you in the video already, so that part should be fine. Can we just test your voice?
Yes. Hello.
Yes, very clear. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. So I will stop my screen sharing and let you
Okay.
share screen, or do you prefer that I share?
Okay.
Just stop screen sharing. There we go. Perfect. Can see your screen very well.
You okay?
Yes. Yes, this is great. Thank you. So when we start again, I'll just briefly introduce you, and then you can start. We have another 5 minutes. Actually, let me just share the screen because I have like a slide with your photo. So I can just share that screen first, and then you can take over.
Okay.
Let me see. Jim is still online. Yeah, Jimmy, thank you so much. I think that was perfect. Great presentation. A lot of very important information. We'll definitely share both the recording and your slides with participants as well, so they can refer back to it. And I loved the interaction that you had, and also amazing timing, just perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Okay, everyone, we have another 3 minutes. Sister Lyneth, are you there? Maybe we can test your sound as well, and also your video.
Yes.
Hi, perfect. Yeah, because right after Professor Peng, you will have your 5 minutes cultural exchange before the break.
All right.
Thank you. Looking forward to that too. All right, welcome back, everyone. Now our next section here is Dr. Peng. So he's the founder and general manager of WeatherRisk Explore, Inc., and also an adjunct professor at the CTBC University and National Central University in Taiwan. And he hosts a program in the Broadcasting Corporation of China here in Taiwan, and is also a weather anchor in Dai Television. More than that, he is the president of Taiwan Disaster Prevention Association, working on integration between the government and the private sector. So he is a very, very busy man, and we're extremely grateful to have him here today to tell us about the history of climate work in the UN, about the Paris Agreement, and about UN FCCC, and also to share with us about the function of the COP series of conferences. Please go ahead. Professor Peng, so grateful to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Johan, and everyone. I'm ChiMing, talking about the climate. Today, my topic, I will talk something about the history of the climate negotiations. And I have a very brief introduction about myself. Actually, it's my honor to in Dai TV for about 16 years. And from the Dai TV, and besides the Dai TV, I also set up my climate work. For example, the data. I attend lots of the data works in Taiwan and in Asia, and also the climate issues, especially serve the lots of the enterprise and also the local and the global society to do some climate and weather things. And also I also have some class in university. And I have set up a Slido. If you have any kind of questions later on, we have about 15 minutes to talk. Please leave any questions if you want. It's very simple. You just type 4G. You can leave any kind of questions. And right now, when we talk about the risk, especially the climate, we should think about the risk animals. Right now, it's very hard issue about 3 kind of the risk animal. They are good friends, and right now they come to approach us. The first one is the black swan. The black swan, just like we talk about COVID-19, is a very rare events and only explained after they happened. So we sometimes, because European, sometimes lots of people from the European, they think the swan is white, and Australians swan is black. So it's a very unusual thing. We can say is a black swan. Another is rhinos. Rhino is just like a very huge. You can see the threats that we can see and acknowledge yet, but we do nothing about that. And right now, about the climate change, we can say is a green swan, just like climate change. Sometimes we have the direct risk, especially the extreme weather, or the climate change, the energy issue, the man-made and related to the environment. So right now, every country suffer the green swan, especially we can say it's a climate change. So recently, the global issue is the 3 animals. They approach us, and they are good friends, hand by hand together. And about the global climate change, actually, we know the issues it's not from the global warming, it's from the ozone hole. The ozone hole we found in year 1980s, and during that time, because the people knows we have the cancer, skin cancer. So in 1987, we signed the Montreal Protocol, and it's very good example for the carbon dioxide. And later on, in the year 1992, they set up the Ipcc and also set up the UNFCCC. And right now, everybody knows the Kyoto Protocol, the COP3 in Japan. And however, the United States withdraw because the Bush president and withdraw. They don't believe the climate change. And in year 2000, after year 2000, the Ipcc, the AR4, the AR4 means the fourth assessment report. And they got the Nobel Prize. And however, and everybody believe the climate change. In year 2015, the Paris Agreement, and we hope we can have 2 degrees only. And later on, although we signed the Paris Agreement, and however, the Trump, the US president, withdrew the Paris Agreement. However, 2 years later, the young girl, Greta Thunberg, and she strike for the global, she set up the global strike. And also such is kind of the strike make the European Union, they announce, because in their elections, especially the European Union Parliament, and lots of the people, lots of the young generation, they support the climate change issues. After they become the parliament, they set up the law. They say it's a climate emergency. Later on, the European Union, they set up the Green Deal, especially the new CEO of the European Union, von der Leyen, and she worked very hard for the climate change issues. And later on in Asia, Korea, Japan, and China, they also set up the climate change issue. So in year 2021 is the real climate change year, especially the President Biden become the president of the United States. However, in last 50 years, my birthday is in year 1970. And during that time, you know, the climate change issue is not big issue. Sometimes we will say it's climate change will like El Nino, La Nina issues. It's not global warming. But this is our traditional weather issues. It's not global warming. It's climate. Climate means El Nino, La Nina, typhoon, hurricane, something about that. But in years 1970, after that, and especially in the year 1990, the global warming issues become more important. However, in the last 50 years, the global the greenhouse gas growth about 100% and 50% growth in the last 26 years. And however, the composition of the carbon dioxide emission is totally different. You know, in the industry revolution from the UK, from the European Union, and all of the emission is from the Europe, and later on changed to the United States. Right now, the majority is from China, and later on in the United States, and also India, the other countries. And however, everybody think the COVID-19. The COVID-19 is a good example to educate the people. We really can reduce the emissions, especially everybody locked down at home, working at home. And actually, about 6% reduced emission is quite good. And however, we should not expect every year we will have another pandemic. So it's a big issue. We can believe the pandemic can reduce the emission. However, it's not easy to lose the health to get the climate change issues. And after that, from the climate change, we will have the UFCCC every year. Every UFCCC they will have a meeting, and we can say it's a counter of a party. And right now we have about 26 planetary conference, and from COP1 to COP26. For example, everybody knows the COP3 in 1997 in Kyoto, Japan, and later on in COP21 in Paris. And last year was in Glasgow in the UK, and this year will be in Egypt. So I probably more, if you interest, please join our team. But it's not an easy job, not to travel. It's a lot of work for the Sdgs members. And last year in COP26 in Glasgow is very interesting because of pandemic, we postponed 1 year for that. And however, every year the climate change issue, the climate deal, and sometimes we will have a deal. And however, last year is Glasgow Climate Pact. The pact means it's not really legal binding. It's just an announcement. And however, the real thing is the pact means that we work together, we believe that, but it's not really the legal, especially the binding legal issues for that. And the pact means we hope we can keep the 1.5 degree commitment. And but it's very close. a little small closer to the 2 degree. And however, the real thing is that the trend is not 1.5 degree, it's 2.4 to 2.7 degree, because the idea is we show carbon zero, net zero, well, in 2050, and it's ideal case. And however, a lot of the government and also the politician or the government leader, they will say, oh, we will be carbon zero. And however, the real policy is the slogan. We can say it's a kind of slogan. The actual thing is the real thing is global warming will be about 2.0 to 3.6 degree. It's an estimation from the every kind of issue. So we can say the new climate agreement is more ambitious, but there is a little hope for limiting the warming to 1.5 degree. So it's not enough to avoid dangerous warming. And so lots of the NGO, for example, the Greta say is blah, blah, blah. And lots of people say it's greenwashing or waterboarding for that. So it's a lot of people argue about the Glasgow Pact is with the devil. And because it's not easy to do the negotiation. For example, this is the country, Tuvalu. Tuvalu is an island countries. They suffer the global warming. And the right one is India. India, the Minister of the Environment. And he complained, we should gradually stop. In the beginning, it's phased out. But right now it's phased down. It's so India's environment minister declared, why target goal? Why not oil and gas? Because it's all fossil fuel. Why you choose a coal? Why not oil and gas? So that's the big issue, especially the argument from the developed and also developing country and also island countries. And the Glasgow Climate Pact, although it's very weak, and however, they also have some progress, especially the developed country will contribute US about 100 billion a year starting in 2025. It's a huge money. However, I don't think it will happen because every country should support for the funding, and your country should bring more money for the global. And you cannot determine where the money coming from and all to where. And so it's not easy for each country to take the money to the UN. And however, the future Ipcc report will becoming more and more important to including the protocol. And this year also, there's some announcement. Announcement means we want to do something, and however, we cannot bring it to the pact or the deal. So we announce, for example, 10 country, 20 country, we can announce we can reduce the coal. We should be carbon zero, especially, for example, this one, 30 countries have agreed to work together to make zero emission vehicle to a new normal. So such is kind of some country work together, and however, it's not all of the country work together. And the most important things for the global negotiation, by my point of view, is Paris Agreement, Article 6. Article 6 means it's a kind of carbon market, or we can say it's a carbon pricing. And for example, this is the global carbon pricing. And this one is Sweden. Sweden, they have the carbon tax. The carbon tax is 1 ton, about $137 US, very expensive. And this one, for example, Singapore is about $3 US, very cheap. So it's a huge gap for that. And because the rule books means they want to make the global carbon market. So every carbon emissions should have their value. And such is kind of the market mechanism can help the global to reduce the carbon, especially the regulation mechanism to set up the rule to avoid the double counting. The double counting means, for example, my company, my office, I still use the energy. Such is kind of carbon emission can be repressed while I make some forest, make some tree in Vietnam. And such is kind of the carbon pricing. And I can set up to be carbon zero from Vietnam to offset my emission. And however, probably Vietnam will think this is carbon, the forest is my government forest. So sometimes it will be double count about the carbon emission. So this is what I say is sometimes we will demolishing the Eastern Wall to supplement the Western Wall. It's our Chinese wall, 挖东墙补西墙. That means lots of the double counting issues right now. However, more than 120 countries use the carbon market, just like a CDM, CER, or carbon tax, or carbon market, or carbon trading. For example, Singapore, right now, they have the CIX and also Metaverse Green Exchange marketplace. And you can have some kind of project. You can get the carbon credit from the carbon trading system. So such is kind of the detail will be announced in COP27. So just my point of view, the Paris Agreement, Article 6 is very important because a lot of people think the carbon should be a value for that, not normal things, not ethical things, it's a real things. And also beside that, in last years, I think the most progress is the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. That's why the ESG, the environment, society, governance, and also the net zero for each of the country is so important because majority of the financial holding company or working together because they think the government only can provide 30% for the total investment. However, the private sector can provide 70% of the total invest to be the carbon net zero target. And so they organize from the bank loans, capital, and also mutual fund working together. More than right now, I know is more than 500 company working together to set up the goal. Especially that they use the science-based SBTI, science-based methodology to achieve the net zero. So it's very important from the banks, for the financial holding company, they work together to choose the company. For example, if your company do not have any kind of ESG, they will withdraw your investment. And such is kind of issue is very important because the net zero kinetic energy has been activated. It's already standard, not optional. Just like, for example, you buy a car, before that, it's sometimes you can say, although your car is very cheap, however, there were lots of optional you should buy. And right now, everything is standard. Net zero is a standard. So enterprise can reach transformation into a net zero plan through a net zero commitment, and early implementation can gain an advantage for that. And however, such is kind of climate change issue is sometimes it's opportunity. For example, opportunity is financing a green agenda. You can invest renewable energy and another new plant, power plant, and also electrification for transportation and automation of mobilities. And another is a challenge, is a risk. For example, your house will suffer the flood from the climate change issue. For example, right now, just I mentioned the ESG for most of the company, especially the big company. However, if you want to do something, work with the big company, you are a small company, you still have some ESG, although it's not so hurry for that. But in the future, every individual or small or big company, they should have some ESG standard. So right now, the European Banking Authority, they will set up some ESG standard in the future. Another one is the climate-related financial disclosure. We can say it's a TCFD. TCFD means you should announce. For example, I am a Coca-Cola, and I should say, the drought event will make the Coca-Cola, how much money we will lose in the future. You should be transparent to everybody, to let everybody know my investment will suffer from the climate change issues. This is ESG, just I mentioned. ESG just like the CSR before. And however, CSR sometimes is just like a public relationship. However, ESG, they have some something, for example, your commitment from the environment or also the climate change issue. So such is kind of investor with a sense of social response, use some indication especially investment opportunity for that. And this is the TCFD, what I mentioned. And for the climate change, actually, we have the opportunities. For example, these opportunities means the transformation for our organization. We can make new business. And another one is risk. For example, the transition risk. If you want to make net zero, we should spend more money for that. And for example, the biggest company in Taiwan is the TSMC, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturer Company, TSMC. They earn lots of money. And however, the risk they want to be net zero will be about 2% of their revenue for every year. So it's very clear transition risk. And another is the physical risk. Physical risk is actually from for example, the drought and also the typhoon will hit, and they will suffer from the flooding and also the drought. They should count the physical risk. For example, the Ipcc Foundation or our Ipcc team, sometimes we have the opportunity. Our opportunities means everybody can get the awareness for that. So right now, the climate change is a very hot issue. It's very good for us to educate the people to join the Ipcc and to help the other people. And another risk is the transition. Although we talk about net zero and we are vegetarian, we are vegan, and however, we cannot count. We did not count the emission. Actually, our organization we had. And so we should spend some money to be net zero organization in the future. The physical risk for the Ipcc probably, and sometimes we are a charity foundation. However, we should spend lots of money and our human resources for the physical risk. Such a kind of issue can help us to do something about that. Okay, and another one is the world greenhouse gas emission. And this we can say, for example, from the energy is the majority, and the energy cover from the buildings and the manufacturing construction, also the building. And the individual process, for example, our daily life is about 5 to 9%. And this is agriculture, about 12%. And sometimes we can see the meat, probably we can cover the agriculture. However, they also have some transportation for that. So sometimes we will say, oh, to be a vegetarian, probably it's not easy to count how much contribution for the meat. And however, we can from the agriculture, individual, and also the transportation for that. And so after that, we can count energy from the CO2 is about 74.4 degree, and the methane is about 70%, 70% for that. So we can get the world greenhouse gas emission, the composition of the global emission for that. And however, if we want to do the net zero, it's a long way. And there was some methodology. For example, just as I mentioned, this is a majority is from the energy. What energy we can do right now? For example, this one is electric car. 60% of sales is in 2030, and in some countries about 2040 net zero electric sector globally. So this is the IEA, International Energy Agency Association. They have some analysis report about how to make the goal of the net zero. And however, it's not easy because our traditional way for the global energy is very stable, and nuclear, coal, and also gas. And however, right now we have the wind and the solar PV. And right now it will jump very quickly, the solar PV, and also from the renewable energy, and also the hydrogen, and also probably the nuclear. We have the next generation nuclear power. And however, it's not easy to imagine the future energy resources. This is a big issue for each countries. And if we set up the road to 100 years to year 2100, and this is a very large issue about the global energy issue. So the transition is not a traditional way. So we should do something, especially we should accept new things in the future. And I should say you the IPCC report. IPCC, every 6 to 7 years, they will have a report for that. IPCC is under the UN, and they are not so many people. And however, every 6 to 7 years, they will invite lots of the professors to join, and they will write down scientific papers and collect in last 6 years lots of the research about climate change. And later on, they will review, write an article. The IPCC report, every report, they have about 3,000 to 4,000 pages. It's a huge book for that. And however, you can find any kind of the details about climate change from the IPCC report. For example, this is this year they have the AR1. AR1 means the physical science basis report for that. And they can write down all the temperature will be, we should work very hard to be the very low carbon dioxide emission. They will keep the 1.5 degree. That's why we hope. And however, if we do nothing, it will be very high CO2 emission. It will be about 4 to 5 degree. And another is the intermediate, and this is the CO2 emission. Probably we will go this way. And however, this way is our goal. We should do something for that. And the second report is about impact and adaptation. This is just tell me the disaster, what happened. So the report offers solution for the impact for that. And the third report is the mitigation of climate change. Mitigation means how we reduce the greenhouse gas emission at highest level. For example, I can show you, this is the summary for the mitigation of the climate change. And just we know the energy, land use, industry, urban, buildings, transportation, this is what we already know. And however, this year they just announced we should focus on the demand and service in the future. A demand and service, just for example, the traditional way is the vegan, no meat. Sometimes the voice is quite small. And however, this report, they focus on the demand and service. I will talk about later on. And the first one is the energy. We can say is the transition for the energy. And for example, solar PV, and also to electrification to improve the energy efficiency. And also another fuels, for example, hydrogen and also biofuel. And another one is just I mentioned to you is the demand and service. For example, this is our daily life. We can bring down global emission by 40 to 70% by 2050. It's a huge potential for that. How we can do that? For example, walking and cycling and electrified transportation, reduce air travel, and habitating houses make large contribution. For the lifestyle change, can make the systemic change across all our society. So such is kind of thing, what we can do. For example, your shoes, your daily life, bicycle, and to be a vegetarian or vegan can help the demand and service. Such is kind of issue talk a lot about the IPCC report for that. So I recommend if you want to do something local to be a vegetarian, you can use this report to educate the people. To be a vegetarian, to be a vegan is very useful for the climate change issues. And another is transportation, for example, reducing demand and low carbon emission, electric vehicle, and also battery, something for that. And also the city and urban. Just I know Singapore and also a lot of the Southeast Asia country, the new city, they have you have some urban management for that. So such is kind of the a good option for that. And also the building is very important. The new building should be net zero plan, and you should not any kind of any new air condition for that. And so it's very important. And because our daily life just indoor, not outdoor. So about 80 to 90% of our time is spent indoors. So such kind of the lightening and also good health and also climate action is very important indoor. So before that, what we think is energy. However, how we spend energy is from the human. So we can do by ourselves can help the global warming. It's very clear evidence for that. And the industry, just I mentioned, this is what I did recently to help the big enterprise, especially for example, the LCD, Acer, and Asus. They are manufacturing company, so they change their industry way to reduce energy. Another new technology is the carbon dioxide removal. For example, from biological side to make more trees, or the CCS, the carbon reduction methodology. However, right now, it still needs some energy to start up the engine to get the carbon dioxide inside, and we should store it under the ground. So it's not easy right now. The expensive and the cost and benefit is still cannot fit our need. And another important is the land use. Land use, for example, natural ecosystem, and can also careful manage for that. And I think it's very, very important in Southeast Asia because the land use is an important issue. And also another is closing the investor gap. The gap means, for example, lots of the banks and holding company, they like to invest some houses to get the more revenue for that. And however, right now the gap financial flow is 3 to 5 times lower than the level we need by 2030. So how to closing the investment gap is very important. And also another thing is policy, regulation, and economic instrument. Such as kind of issue is also very important. And however, for example, in Taiwan, some parliament, if they say, oh, I support the climate change, however, probably you cannot get too much support for that because everybody very cool down for that. And another one is technology and also innovation. It's very important to have a new innovation for that. However, such as kind of issue should get the support. And I think for the young generation, it's very good for the society to use the new way to get the innovation to change your society. Okay, that's my talk. I open the question to everybody.
Thank you so much, Professor Peng. This is very, very informative. A lot of information. Thank you. Yeah, let's open up for questions. I put a couple of questions in the chat. I know that you had the Slido. Yeah. So I think maybe we can use both the chat and the Slido, depending on what is more convenient for people. If you can access the chat, it's at the top of your screen. Mm-hmm. But let's get some more questions from our participants.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the first question is Johan. Financial institutions are so-called net zero matter socially responsible. Just I know the Singapore government is very active for that because Singapore government is very close related to the European Union and also linked with the UNFCCC. So right now, the Singapore, they have two institutions. The first one is the CIX. They supported from the DBS and also from the DMASI, the Singapore National Investment Holding Company. And they set up the carbon trading ecosystem for that. And such is kind of issue because Paris Agreement, Article 6, they will set up, they encourage the carbon local market for that. And I think the Singapore government and also some local holding company, they have some, they saw some the potential investment. And although Singapore is a small country, and however, recently the Singapore people approached me because they know in Taiwan, there were lots of the huge company, they have a huge emission and they want to offset their carbon emission. So from the market point of view, it's good. And from the regulation, because right now the Glasgow, the Financial Net Zero Alliance, and such is kind of the alliance actually encourage the investor, you should do something about the ESG. So just I know lots of the big company, they got the pressure from the investor. Oh, your ESG is not good, and you do not have a net zero plan. So I think regulation and also the government and also some investor, they know the trend and prepare in advance is very important. So right now, I don't know what happened in Singapore, but in local in Taiwan and also in Asia, every company and big enterprise, they also all of the company they have an ESG team for that. So I think for the Tzu Foundation, especially most of you, is our potential, because in their ESG report, they should work with some organization for that. And if we can have some kind of a plan, not only to educate people, or you should join the Tzu, however, we can open our mind to work with the enterprise. It's our big opportunity for the climate change issues. Okay, this is Johan, the first question, and I also curious about the industry process. You interested making more climate friendly?
Maybe we can take one of the questions from Slido in between.
Okay, okay.
Thank you so much for your answer, Professor Peng.
Okay, this is the big issues. Just because the federal power, because the CO2 is polluted air or not. There was lots of argument from the history of the US. Each president have different policy. And because the Joe Biden is very active about the climate change issues. However, in their Congress, he failed. He failed his big plan. So I don't know in the future, because just you mentioned the US, you were called reading out the federal power to create the emission. I think it's a big issue. And however, in United States, for example, the carbon market in California and Canada, some of the states in Canada, they have the carbon market. Just I know the carbon market and their ambitions is very clear. So from the political view, not successful in the United States. However, in the real carbon market view, quite successful. So I think this is just my point of view. Okay, this is the role of nuclear energy in achieving the net zero target. The nuclear, actually, by my point of view, is probably is the future. Probably is the future. You can see from the books of Bill Gates, how to avoid the climate risk. He mentioned about the fourth generation and nuclear power energy, and quite safe, quite small, and good potential. However, probably it will be 10 years later, and not every country believe the safety of the nuclear. For example, in Taiwan, everybody think the nuclear. Taiwan is about 50 to 50. Some people agree the nuclear. Some people think nuclear is dangerous. And so, how to educate all the people, just like the people in France, they think that the nuclear is quite safe. It's totally different. It's not easy. So it's a country by country to think about this. But from the real things, I think the nuclear energy probably is in the future. We should keep study for that. But right now, most of the nuclear energy is quite old, and we should have some potential we should have some resources to do something new for the new nuclear energy. However, it's country by country. Not every country people can believe the nuclear energy. For example, right now, the Japan, they want to restart nuclear energy. However, some kind of the financial estimation say it's very expensive. Some people say it's cheap. Yeah. What's the most valuable potential renewable energy at the moment? Actually, the solar PV is the most easy way to do that. and the offshore wind farm are more expensive. For example, right now in Taiwan, we will have about 1,000 offshore wind farm for that, and it's a huge potential. But we still suffer the extreme weather. For example, 2 days ago, because the afternoon shower, lightning strike, shower rain, it's a huge event in Taiwan, and all of the energy, solar PV, the energy from the 5 gigawatt down to 2 gigawatt. So it's a big assessment for our local area. So it's not easy. You should have another way to balance all of the energy together. So the renewable energy sometimes is not so stable, and we should use another way. For example, the prediction, and also the carbon, the offshore wind farm, and also probably some gas power plant station to stabilize all of the energy together. Not easy to rejuvenate, but the case of Bhutan as a carbon negotiator country is amazing. Could be country have a percentage of it. Actually, I think you can watch recently the EU right now, because last year the European Union they spent their gas energy, especially the gas, because the gas is also a fossil fuel energy. They just compared to the coal is about 1/3 to 50% to 50%. So the coal, the gas is still I can say is a transition energy, because just more clean, not 100%, just 1/3 to 50% of the coal compared to the coal. So right now the European Union, they still use some gas for that. And however, 45% of the gas from the European Union is from Russia. So recently, let's know, in May, they just announced a Repower EU plan. They will spend about 210 billion euro to spend the money to more renewable energy. They want to cut down the gas import from Russia and use their local energy. So, for example, in Taiwan, I think it's also the same in Singapore. If we earn $10 here, and we spend about $1 to $4 to buy the gas or coal or oil for that. So the renewable energy is a good energy to in your country. You do not need to spend money to buy the energy from the other country. For example, buy the energy from the Russia. So some kind of transition, the concept transition is very important, such as like a European Union. So because Bhutan is a very small countries, they are very agricultural type weather pattern, not like some big countries pattern. So it's totally different. And however, European Union, they have the goal, and I think the European Union, because for example, 2 days ago, the UK government and the UK government, because sometimes the party will change. The UK government, they have the climate change council for that, and such is kind of an independent committee. They organize together. They have some judgment about the net zero plan. They say the UK government cannot achieve the net zero, so they will have some kind of the judgment and push the government to do that. So it's not easy. It's dream, but if we do not have any kind of dream, we cannot achieve the net zero. Okay, another one.
Sorry. So I think that we are already at time.
Okay.
So maybe Professor Peng, if you would it be possible for you to actually send me the answers to the remaining questions?
Okay,
and
sure.
then I can post it directly to all the participants.
Okay.
I think this has been extremely interesting and very helpful. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Professor Peng. and really appreciate all these great questions as well from everyone. Thank you so much. Professor Peng, if you can just stop sharing screen, then I will take over the screen sharing. Okay, yes. All right, thank you so much. So next we have Lynette, one of our participants from the Philippines, who will give us a 5-minute cultural exchange. So she will talk about the Bayanihan. Is that Bayanihan? Well, she will pronounce it herself. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Lynette. I will stop sharing and you can share your screen.
No, it's okay. It's okay, Johan. I did not. Can you proceed on sharing the same screen as well, or wait for a while?
Sure. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I will just find. Okay, can you allow me to share the screen, please? Here you go. I was shocked about the photo. So, yeah. Thank you, everyone. So the one you see in the photo is the traditional way of relocating. So the manner by which people help that family to relocate is called bayanihan. So back then, moving houses doesn't just involve carrying bags of belongings, but carrying the whole house. And a traditional Filipino house is called bahay kubo. So it's a house made of indigenous materials like bamboo and nipa leaves. So yeah, it can be moved like this. So this is the most popular demonstration of bayanihan. But in the modern times, the bayanihan spirit, of course, it still lives on and has actually become a symbolic term to mean a community of people helping one another in times of need. So it has been demonstrated in many forms, like when natural calamities or disasters strike. And as you can see, bayanihan, there are two keywords here. First is bayan, which translates to community. Then there's also bayani, which translates to hero. So this is a culture that turns ordinary Filipinos into heroes. Bayanihan is inviting everyone to do the hero work together. So yeah, bayanihan spirit is one of the beautiful things that Filipinos own and can be proud of. That's it. Thank you very much. I have other cultural sharing up my sleeve, but I can only have one today. So thank you for the time.
Thank you so much, Lynette. This is really great. And we are definitely looking forward to more cultural sharings from other participants in the future. Thank you. So next we have another break. So we will reconvene at 10:30. So you actually have a 12-minute break. And at that point, we will get to hear about Sdgs engagement in the COP conferences from Sister Ashley. So make sure you're back at 10:30 and we'll see you then. Thank you. Hello there, all our guests from Uganda. Very, very happy to have you online. Thank you so much for joining us. Maybe can we test your video and audio? I believe Nuruddin, you are here.
Yes. Yeah, yes, how
Oh,
are you?
I can hear you. Perfect.
Mhm.
Can you turn on your video
Yeah.
as well so we can see you?
Okay. So should I turn on my video?
Yes, please. Yes, please turn on your video as well. Here we go.
Okay.
Yes, I can see you.
Yeah, is that
Excellent.
okay?
Great.
Yeah.
Yes, this is perfect. Yeah, we're really looking forward to your to hearing you share about the work. Also, Marjorie, can we test your audio and video as well?
Hi, Johan.
Hi. Hi.
We're very
Yes.
happy to be here. It's morning in Uganda.
Yes.
Unfortunately for me, electricity is off because it's raining.
Oh. Oh. So
Yeah.
you're using your phone to connect?
I'm using my laptop, but there's no light where I am because the electricity is off because of the rain. But we have
Got it.
our vice president is here. Mercy is here. I also see some people from our team who have joined in today. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. So will anyone who is planning to talk, can you please unmute yourselves and we can test your audio?
Marcy, are you there?
Yes, Marjorie, I'm here. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy
morning, Mercy.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm happy to join the rest of the team here, and we're looking forward to Noordin and Marjorie's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Marjorie, would you be sharing your own slides so you can control the pacing of the slides, or would you prefer that I share?
I'll be sharing them.
All right, sounds good. Great. All right, so I'll let you guys rest for a little bit. We have one other sharing coming in between. So you will start at 10:55 our time. So that would be 5:55 your time. Thank you again for getting up so early to join us. We are so honored to have you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you too.
Thank you. Sister Yishang, since you're on, maybe you're just listening in. If you would like to give in live rather than using the pre-recording, you're very welcome to, but we're also happy to use the pre-recording. Okay, we'll see everyone in 2 minutes. All right, welcome back, everyone. And now we are very happy to have Ashley with us. I think you all know her very, very well. She is one of the key organizers of this program, and she is part of the UN team in City USA, and we are working very closely together. So we are very grateful and happy to have Ashley share with us about what CG has been doing at the COP conferences, the climate conferences. And I think if, in case she doesn't mention it, COP stands for, I believe, Conference of the Parties. So these are the parties to the climate change protocols. All right, let's start.
Hi everyone, this is Ashley. So I'm here today just to quickly share with everyone about some CG's engagement at COP, particularly COP26 that happened last year in Glasgow, Scotland. So before we look into the activities that CG have been engaging at COP, we are going to look into history first. So CG has started to participate in COP since COP19. That was in Poland, and after that, CG have been sending volunteers and staff to participate at COP every year, as you can see here. And until last year, we were at Glasgow, Scotland, to participate at COP26. So speaking of CG's engagement at COP, I want to start with some CG delegations team. So as I mentioned earlier, CG have been engaging at COP every year, and throughout the years, we have volunteers from various countries and chapters to volunteer themselves to attend the conference, to learn something, and also to represent CG to provide some presentations, building some networks throughout the conference. So last year, COP26 was in Glasgow. So we have UK volunteers that were attending. As you can see, we have volunteers from UK, we have volunteers from Germany as well, that they pay all the expenses at their own and come to participate in the conference and to represent CG in this international platform. And in addition to that, usually COP is also participated by the Global Partnership Affairs Department, which you can see we have our CEO, Deborah Siku here, and Steve, Tiffany, me, myself, and also Sarah. And in addition to that, we usually also have CG media team that will be helping to do some documentary recording to keep the footprints of CG's engagement at COP. And in addition to that, usually we also have medical professionals, including like Dr. Mingnan Lin, Dr. Kenneth Liao from the US, and also Dr. ChiMing Peng, which is expert and very experienced at the COP platform that usually will be with us to attend the COP conferences. So for COP26, what exactly Tzu have been doing at the conference is that we have basically four main types of engagement. So the first one is talks and presentation at the pavilion. So pavilion is where different countries or different organizations rented the space to have some exhibition. So it's like an exhibition booth, which is so much bigger. So they have the space to do some panel discussion and talks to the people who are at COP. And in addition to that, Tzu also spoke at one of the side events during the COP, and we work with various partners with this. And in addition to that, Tzu also hosted 9 press conferences at COP26. And we also did 7 informative vlogs, which I can introduce to you all in a while. So the first thing I want to talk about is the vlog thing. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but me and Tiffany we done some vlogs during our COP experience last year. So there are 7 in total, but I'm just going to quickly show you guys one of the episode, because this can slightly let you know what Tzu has been doing at COP26.
Hello，
大家早上好。
Good morning。
今天是COP的第11天，也就是倒数最后第2天。那我们今天呢要进去会场，那我们就有干嘛呢 ，Tiffany？
我们今天有一场记者会，然后是关于宗教合作。
对，那我们今天就来让大家看看慈济团队都在做什么。等一下见喽，
拜拜。
师伯今天要代表慈济要讲宗教对于气候变迁大会的一些回馈，你紧张吗？
是有点紧张，因为这是任务重大，希望实际以宗教角度怎么切入这次高峰会议。那当然主要就是说能够减到1.5°C 的话目前还在努力中。可是我们实际怎么以跨宗教，以一个宗教团体能够结合推树推环保，然后再以绿化的意愿。以跟大家来分享，希望能够引起大家共鸣，能够共知、共识、共行。
So why do you think press conferences are so important for us?
Well, there's several reasons why press conferences are so important for us. The most important is that we need to be active participants in the conversation on climate change. And through press conferences, we are able to invite not just Tzu, but a lot of our partners and guest speakers as well to discuss important issues surrounding the climate change and the climate change conference.
那我们现在在的地方呢，其实就是一个recharge launch， 那就是可以让我们充手机的地方。那我们慈济的团队呢，其实在这个 conference 很常都会分开，因为我们都会有参加不同的会议。像是今天 actually 我就是在这个地方，因为我等一下有另外一个活动。那 Tiffany 呢，则是在我们的记者会上主持，所以大家可以来看一下我们记者会的画面。好，那我们这里可以看到 Tiffany 怎么跑到荧幕里面去了呢？那其实她现在是在记者会的现场，然后我在另外一个地方就可以透过COP26的平台，然后去看现场直播。那我们就祝 Tiffany 跟记者会一切顺利。
最重要另外一点就是想说，去找一下看有没有一些可以合作的伙伴啊，比如说在这里我们可以怎样跟他们合作。结果昨天找到一个，就是他是用那个卡片气候变迁呢，用游戏的方式来怎样带去学校，然后带动。然后今天呢，我们又找到一个要跟我们一起做环保了，他是愿意做我们的志工。
好，我是英国慈济志工雨洁。第一次参加这么多 security guard 的会议，然后过 就是进来还要过安检。那但是看到这么多人就是一起为气候变迁而努力而发生，是觉得很感动。
那听说这次你第2次参加 COP， 那跟第1次有什么不一样呢？
觉得第2次感觉就是很多的partners 都有跟我们团队一起来对谈，然后记者会等等都有很多的互动。我觉得联合国团队这几年的努力，按赞。
Okay. So from the video, you can slightly know about what CG has been doing at COP26. And if you're in, we actually have many other topics that we do. So you can go to YouTube and look for the TC News YouTube channel, and then they have a playlist that is talking about AT at COP series. So feel free to check them. And yeah, so the first thing that the second thing that we did at COP, most importantly, is the press conferences. So throughout the years, CG has been doing many press conferences at COP, and this is the space to let different organizations to actually share some of their main outcomes from specific projects, or to interact with our partners to see how we can have more dialogues on the issue of climate change. So you can see that among the 9 conferences that we have we talk about climate neutrality, climate, diet, youth in general, and also we did climate finance, land management, food insecurity, and interfaith. So last year it's pretty special. We did it in hybrid way. So we have speakers from physically in at the spot, and also we have speakers that were connected online, or we also have some pre-recorded videos. And you can see that we work with various partners, including IYLP, Prof, and some other organizations as well. So usually in these press conferences, we will have our CG volunteers to represent CG to do some presentation. So for example, you can see Jimmy, and all of you must be aware of your mentors, ChiMing Xuejie and also Lydia Xuejie, were on the press conferences as well to give the presentation on behalf of CG. And yes, more pictures on press conferences. And usually after the press conferences, we will also interact with the participants that came. So usually they might have some questions to us, or they want to know more about CG, or generally they just want to have to see how we can work together in the future, for instance. And in addition to that, last year we also have the opportunity to speak at the site event. So the site event, so COP is a very competitive wise for a site event, because there are so many organizations that are looking to do a presentation. So it is very important to work with other organizations and partners to have a combined voices through one event. So from here you can see we work with our other partners, including Prof and I forgot some of the organization, but yeah, so CG have been presenting in this site event to talk about the ambition and scale of change required in the global food system. So as you know, CG is also very active in promoting plant-based diet and lifestyle changes in order to combat climate change. So this is one of our main key points that we have been presenting at the site event as well. And in addition to that, we also have some events at the pavilion, like I mentioned earlier. So in the pavilion space, we have our CG speakers like Dr. Mingnan Lin to work with our WHO and some other partners to further discuss the effect of climate change on health. And in addition to that, our volunteers will also have the opportunities to visit all the other pavilions and interact with other people over there. And in addition to that, we have also another talks at the pavilion of WWF. So as you can see, we work with different partners again to talk about interfaith, to talk about nature, to see how various organizations can contribute their effort in this topic. And we have our CEO, Deborah Suku, that are presenting on behalf of Tsuji. And in addition to that, last year, it was quite a fruitful one because we also have an exhibition booth that we can use for a day to showcase all Tsuji's work, especially on some of our dye technology and Jingsi technologies items. And you can see we have volunteers from the UK and Germany as well to help to be the volunteer at the booth, and they interact with all the people that came, and then they introduce the work of Tsuji and further exchange some information to see how we can engage with these people in the future. And last year, we also have the opportunity, through one of our partners, we have the opportunity to utilize one of the pavilion space, but it's a very small one, to host some small events aside from the COP main events. So you can see we have like a 2-hour events, a roundtable discussion to talk about how faith-based organization can actually raise more awareness at the COP conferences, and also how faith-based organization can contribute more in the climate change dialogue. So we have attracted a lot of people who are interested in the topic and come to interact with us. And in addition to all the activities and events inside the COP venue, we actually also actively participate in some different events and opportunities outside of COP venue. So one of that is the COP26 vigil, and you can see that so Glasgow City, they have recruited, invited many religious leaders, religious organizations to come together to host a prayer session, dialogues, and also interaction to raise awareness on carbon emission reduction, and to see how different religion and faith can come together to amplify the voices and call for action to all the policymakers and decision makers. So I have slightly talked about what Tsuji have been doing at COP, and the most importantly one is to networking and building connection. So one of the reasons that Tsuji always attend COP is also to ensure that we get more connection from that platform, so that we can utilize that connection in our local project, in our on-the-ground work. So for example, last year, we have visited Sierra Leone Pavilion. So the government of Sierra Leone had this pavilion which they showcase some of the work that Sierra Leone government is doing on agricultural part. So we visited them, we interacted with them, and we let them know that we are very active in Freetown, Sierra Leone. We work with different kind of organization, as I shared it last week. So this is in order to exchange our ideas with them, and to see how in the future Tsuji can actually work with the government of Sierra Leone or their connection on the matter of climate change, and also to see how we can improve the agriculture. And we also met with the president of Sierra Leone, as you can see from the picture here, and we also have the opportunity to talk to them. And I think this is a very good outcome, because in the future we have the connection to all this Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, and then this will help Tsuji to further get the opportunities to engage with them locally in Sierra Leone, so we can have the opportunities to ensure that our programs can go in depth and can bring real impact to the community. And in addition to that, as you see in the vlog video just now, so our volunteers are also actively engage, interact with all the other participants at COP. This is also very important for Tsuji volunteers, because they are able to identify some of the local partners that that they can work with. So for example, ChiMing Shijie and Susan Suku here, they met with some an amazing organization that UK CG might can work with them in the future. So this is a very good opportunity for CG volunteers to explore as well. So speaking very quickly on everything at COP26, so what do you what can you expect for COP27 this year? And as you know, COP27 will be happening around early November in Egypt. So again, CG has just submitted our site event and pavilion and exhibition application. So we, finger crossed, we are waiting for some good news for that. And we have also just submit our delegation spots to see how many badges can we secure this year. So usually when CG attending COP, we have a certain number of badges that given to us. So for example, last year, I believe we have 20 badges per week. So that means that for throughout the 2 weeks of COP, there will be like 20% to represent CG each week. Yeah, so this year we need to see how many badges we have, but similarly to the past years, we are going to have presentations, talks, and most importantly, you are going to do a lot of networking and interaction with the other people. So you have to be really prepare yourself to talk to people and to gain more knowledge. So if you are interested, looking to apply for the opportunity to attend COP with us, so I suggest you to start following more climate change news from now, and also to Google more information on COP26, or you can also always reach out to us to see what we can offer to help you to get more prepared with this procedure. Yeah, so I think that's all for my presentation today. And if you have any questions, feel free to write it to the line chat to us, so we will be answering, or you can reach out to us personally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashley, for pre-recording that video. Now, if there are any questions that you would like to ask right away, Jimmy has agreed to answer if he is able to answer. Otherwise, you can also always post questions in the line chats, and we will make both the questions and the answers available to everyone. Are there any questions right now regarding CG at COP? Okay, I don't hear any questions, and there's a chat. Let me see. Okay, no, I think we're okay. Thank you. So if you have any questions or you think about anything later on, feel free to post it in the line chat. And of course, that's true for any of these presentations. You can always post in the line chat after, and we will help reach out. And we will also make both the questions and the answers available to everyone. Thank you so much. Next, we have a very amazing, give me a second, here we go. Yes, we have the wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So I was so lucky that I met Dr. Mukisa Marjorie in Stockholm at the Stockholm Plus 50 conference. And she is a regional coordinator at the Uganda Youth Coalition for the Sdgs. And she agreed not only to speak herself at this session, but also to bring in other participants or other members of the Uganda Youth Coalition. So we'll have Mr. Busingye Nuruddin. And if you are not aware of this, I was not, but it's good to know that in Uganda, just like in China, people always write the last name first, or the surname first, and then the given name. So if you want to ask questions, you can just call them Marjorie and Nuruddin. Right. So the Uganda Youth Coalition is working with the Office of the Prime Minister of Uganda to realize the Sustainable Development Goals for the country. And we are very honored to now have Dr. Majiri Mukisa and Mr. Nuruddin Basinga from the Uganda Youth Coalition with us today to share about climate change mitigation and adaptation in Uganda. So I will stop the screen share and you can share the screen, Marjorie, and go ahead, take it away. Marjorie, can you unmute it? Yes, there we go.
Thank you very much, Johan, and my so yeah, and to the members of the Youth Coalition that are part of this, thank you for joining in. I'll now just, my light is not so good, but I'll just display the screen and then Nuruddin will give us a presentation.
Marjorie, we still cannot see. Oh, it's coming up now. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Now we can see a screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Johan, for giving us this opportunity to speak to the rest of the young people in the world. My name is Basinga Nuruddin. I am the head of communication and advocacy of the Youth Coalition for SDGs. And Dr. Majiri Mukisa is the region coordinator for the Youth Coalition for SDGs. Yeah, straight away, in the interest of time, we want to really present about Uganda, talk about the Youth Coalition for SDGs, talk about the climate change cluster under the coalition, but also talk about the impacts of climate change in Uganda, adaptation, mitigation challenges, and then the predictions in the future, but also questions if members have any questions. Okay, yeah. So Uganda is a landlocked country located in East Africa. The capital city is called Kampala. We speak over 50 languages, the indigenous languages, and the population is estimated to be 45 million people, with the biggest percentage of the young people. So the age of 0 up to 35, these are young people. They make up to 77%. So Marjorie, if you can go to another slide. Yes, still about Uganda, 60 to 26% of Uganda, these are rivers, they are lakes, we have wetlands, and then we are also regarded to have to be taken as a Great Lakes region, because all these rivers make up to the Great Lakes region, with the biggest being Congo. Lake Victoria is the largest lake located in Uganda, and 70% of the population depend on agriculture. And when we speak about agriculture, realize that very many people are affected because of the climate change impacts, and yet this is our livelihood. And Uganda is rich in the biodiversity, but also in natural resources. Imagine another slide. Yes, so the climate is equatorial. You realize that we are along the equator, and we receive two types of seasons. We have a rainy season and a dry season. Marjorie? So as you can see on the map, that is the map of Africa, and Uganda is somewhere there in a red circle. And you can see on this other side, it is Lake Victoria, and that is our national flag. We really respect biodiversity, and that is why we picked the crested crane to be our national bird. You can as well look at the landscape. Down here, this is Lake Bunyonyi. I invite all members here to find some time and visit. You can see the waterfalls, and recently they wanted to construct a dam there, and very many young people came to make sure that that stops. Marjorie, another slide. Like I said, we normally participate in agriculture. Agriculture is our backbone, whereby very many young people are employed in agriculture sector, and the women also participate in agriculture sector. So yeah, so that is how it's done in the agriculture sector. We also have a very rich wildlife. The next slide. The wildlife is very rich, and I realized that very many the chimpanzees are from Uganda, and then the other part of Rwanda. So I still invite people to come and visit Uganda in the wildlife. The weather is also nice. You can see that ice is on top of Mountain Rwenzori, and then yeah, so that is how our weather. Uganda is, we don't receive winter in Uganda. Winter is only at the mountain. Like I said, Uganda is one of those countries that are ranked to be climate, that have a lot of climate change impacts. When you look at the first picture, that happened in Kasese, whereby the river busted and it went into people's houses. You can see there's a lot of plastic waste. Water cannot really move because of plastic and waste. The northern Uganda, it is so dry, people have food insecurity, and then in the urban center, you can see how the floods really affect the people. So I'll skip some slides. I'll go to a slide of the Youth Coalition, about the Youth Coalition. Yes. So the Youth Coalition was started in 2019 under the guidance of Her Excellency, Madame Rosa Malango, who was the head of the UN in Uganda. And the SDG Secretariat under the Office of Prime Minister. The coalition is made up of 50 organizations, but also companies and entities. We wanted to make sure that everyone is brought on board in the achievement of the SDGs. We have 4 active regions, that is the East, the West, and the South. We also are divided in 2 clusters, the climate action and environment cluster, but human capital development cluster, the innovation and sports cluster, but also culture and gender equity cluster. So this is how the coalition is doing its work. We have programs in tree planting. We have programs, we normally mobilize all the people to run for their particular SDGs. We do mobilize young people to attend public events. We do petition government. We also influence, but also advocate for public policy. So we contribute to the development of these policies. We do awareness campaigns. We do school debates in line with climate change and the achievement of SDGs. But we also do resource mobilization and partnership between development partners and government. Moving forward, in terms of mitigation and adaptation for Uganda, we have contributed to the development of the NDCs. And as you're aware, Uganda has a commitment, and in the middle of this month, we will be submitting our NDCs and to see how we can best commit to the Kyoto Protocol. We also launched a program supported by UNCDF and other partners to do with empowerment. We also influenced the government of Uganda to come up with the National Climate Change Act of 2022, and our work was really host consultations of young people. We also advocated for the establishment of the Climate Change Department under the Ministry of Water and Environment. So you realize that very many people were affected by climate change, and specifically talking about young people do not know about issues of climate change. They don't know that what they are doing is contributing to the climate impact. So the government of Uganda set apart some resources to empower the Climate Change Department under the Ministry of Water and Environment, look at specifically climate change issues and advise government on how best we can commit to making sure that we have zero impacts of climate change. But we also involve communities in education on climate action. Uganda's commitment to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, the Kyoto Protocol, but also the Paris Agreement that calls upon country specific climate actions. You realize that for us as a country, we normally want to focus more. We want to focus more on action for climate change empowerment, because we are a least development country, and that's where we want to really mobilize other like-minded countries to really join us, making sure that this comes, the commitment is really achieved. And yeah, so we also have eco-friendly energy programs. The government of Uganda has committed to increase its budget towards climate change adaptation and mitigation. We also launched a very wide campaign to make sure that we restore the forest. You realize that Uganda is one of those countries that have a lot of refugees, and in refugee host communities, you realize that trees are cut down to act as charcoal, but also wood fuel. So we launched a very big campaign to make sure that we recover the forest. Still going on with mitigation, we have improved agriculture. Like I said, this is our backbone as a country. Policy formulation and law enforcement. We've done awareness campaigns. We've coordinated partnership between our local government, but also international partners, and we've localized SDGs in the local languages so that people can really contribute. Realize that we are going to have a national voluntary review of the SDGs, and we really want to have the impact, the inputs of all people in Uganda. Affirmative action for gender, this is key. We've really made sure that in the National Development Plan, we plan relating to gender and the impacts of climate change. Disaster risk reduction, education and research has been carried out. Like I said, the government committed more resources to climate change programs, and then planting trees. Challenges, there are still a number of challenges, inadequate resources in the implementation, weak government systems, like I said, inadequate funding, lack of coordination among partners, limited knowledge management and sharing, but also the laws. People do not know these laws, and as for us as the coalition, we are still pushing for more. Way forward, more awareness campaigns on blue economy. You realize, like I said, we are in a Great Lakes region, so issues of blue economy are pertinent issues to us as a country. But also green economy, whereby we want to make sure that we have The green manufacturing strategy, it is in pipeline, but we want to mobilize all manufacturers in Uganda to respect the strategy. More government funding is a priority. We are advocating for government to allocate more resources to these programs. Involvement of youth, women, refugees in these programs is also key. We are incorporating climate change adaptation and mitigation in the education curriculum. And government has set aside some resources to make sure that readers are printed so that people have this information on climate change. But also increase in monitoring and evaluation. We have updated our Ipcc data management model, and very soon we shall be also reporting on our emission as a country. Yeah, thank you so much. If you have any question, kindly get back to us. It has been Senior Nurudin and then Dr. Marjorie Mukisa from the Youth Coalition for SDGs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nurudin. This is really great. Dr. Marjorie, would you like to add anything before we start the Q&A session?
Nurudin, for that presentation. Maybe just to add on affirmative action on gender. In Uganda, like we noted in the slides, the majority of the population depends on charcoal for fuel generation, for cooking, for so many things. And a lot of rural women are involved in the charcoal production. So you find that the charcoal is made from trees. So a lot of trees are cut down to produce the charcoal. And a lot of this work is done by women. And I think, Johan, when you saw this presentation, you asked us about the fact that women don't own land. And it's true, in many of the rural areas, women cannot own land. It's owned by the men. It's only in the urban areas where the women might be able to own land with more education. But in the rural areas, the women are not educated and the laws are also not enforced. So you find that a lot, it's still like we're still trying to do a lot of work in terms of empowering women, especially in the rural areas. And maybe additionally, in terms of the challenges we face, as you all noted, like at the beginning of this presentation, I had no electricity. And because it was raining, I live close to Lake Victoria, and each time it rains, there's no electricity. So, and that means the hospitals around here can't have electricity, so the patients will die. So that's still a lot. And now we have had an increase in the rains. So that means that the rains are more frequent and unpredictable. So that's also an effect of climate change. And also the agriculture, as noted in the slides, the sun has become, like the temperatures are higher. That means the crops are not growing, and yet 70% of the population depends on agriculture. So those are still challenges that we are trying to find ways of mitigating. And maybe also to note, there's a lot of corruption. So sometimes just close to where I stay down here, if it was day, I would show a picture. There's a wetland, and there's a lot of wetland encroachment. But that means that when people encroach on the wetland, if they're able to pay some money, they would be excused. The law won't be enforced. So because that could also be because of poverty and other factors. But I thought I should add that. Yeah, otherwise, thank you very much, Nurudin, and thank you very much, everyone, for logging in for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marjorie. Maybe could you just, you were talking about wetland incursions. Could you just explain a little bit what kind of incursions that would be, just so we can fully grasp the impact of what you're mentioning?
So a big part of Uganda has a lot of blue, like a lot of lakes and swamps and wetlands. But you find that flower factories, big flower factories that export flowers from Uganda to other countries, usually like to set up their factories just in the wetlands, because then the flowers can grow, and then the waste can also be disposed of into the wetlands. So that's a very big challenge, because these companies are big investors, high-end investors in Uganda. So it becomes very difficult for the government to regulate them, because they bring in a lot of revenue,
and yet they also encroach on the wetlands. So maybe short term, the effect may not be seen, but I know that in 10 years, 5 years, we'll see the effect, because these are so many all over the shores of Lake Victoria. There are a lot of flower factories, and also, of course, residential houses, because just close by, it's mostly residential. So a lot of residential homes in the wetlands. So the wetlands has been encroached on. And I wanted to attach those pictures, but I wasn't able. Maybe I'll send them to Johan. But when it rains, because of the wetlands that have been encroached on, the water levels are high, like on the dry land. There's a lot of water in the homes. I'll send the pictures. Maybe I'll share them with Johan, who can share them with everyone else. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so the wetlands, they act as reservoirs to take some of the water when it rains and reduce flooding in the drier areas. Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So we do have some questions. Let me see here. So Lynette would like to ask more about how the Youth Coalition is localizing the SDGs into community programs so that more young people can join.
Yes, Johan, yes, the Youth Coalition, like I said, it has over 50 campaigns and CSOs, but also we are working closely with government under the Office of the Prime Minister and the UN systems in Uganda. We have supported government to translate the 17 SDGs into 17 local languages. Like I said, we speak over 50 languages. And government doesn't have enough resources to make sure that all the 50 languages, all the people understand SDGs in their languages. But we have done the best to make sure that we translate in the 17 languages, 17 common languages, Luganda, Lunyankore, Rusoga, and some other languages. So this is how we are localizing the SDGs. But also, we have regional coordinators, and Dr. Marjorie is one of the coordinators coordinating in different regions. We have major 4 regions, and we have regional coordinators in those regions. And the coalition is also made up of grassroots organizations that come from northern Uganda, eastern Uganda, central Uganda, in Karamoja, in Kasese. So this is how we are localizing this information. The government has launched their parish development model that is going to allocate resources from the grassroots. So we are going to attach ourselves to these systems and structures, to making sure that all young people, everyone on the grassroots, understand the agenda of sustainable development goals, but also connect in integrate their solutions, their projects, their enterprises towards the targets of the SDGs and the commitments of the SDGs. So this is how the coalition is decentralizing its work, and we're looking forward for more engagement, more partnership, but we want to make sure that in the UN high-level political, this coalition is adopted by the UN so that we can have it as a global coalition for young people for SDGs. You realize that we only have 8 years to the implementation of the SDGs. So what is next? So the young people need to be at the center discussing a way forward and what will be the future of the youth. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nuruddin. That's really, really amazing. I mean, it's such a big country, so being able to reach out to a large percentage of the population must be an exceptional challenge. So having that kind of very decentralized structure where the representatives in the different regions can help plan for how they can reach out in that region. That sounds like a very good way of working on this. Thank you, and thank you also for the invitation to join in an international or global youth coalition. I think many of our participants here would be very interesting to join in that. Thank you so much. make sure, everyone, that you also read the comments by Francis in the... Actually, Francis, would you like to just share with us some of your thoughts and mentions in the chat? It might be even easier than having everyone read it.
Thank you, Johan, and thank you, everyone. Thank you again for this opportunity. I just wanted to supplement on the colleagues Nordin and Major that have said about how we are scaling up to everyone. Like Nordin has said, we have regional offices, regional blocks, and these regional blocks are subdivided into other sub-regions. You find that for example, each region has about 15 districts, and then each region is again divided into other sub-regions. So that is the way we try to reach out to everyone. And also regional coordinators, Major, myself, and the other two, we do regional activities, and these regional activities are scaled up into districts, into villages, into communities, to ensure that everyone participates. And sometimes these activities are done in the indigenous community languages. So we also hold talk shows in the community radios, regional radios, the various local languages, to ensure that everybody participates. I think that is what I wanted to supplement. And also, we are cognizant that in order to upscale climate actions, we need to really have intentional focus on women and girls. So we have a gender structure, a gender cluster in the coalition that ensures that every woman, every girl, everywhere, in every community participate in the coalition activities to amplify the delivery and monitoring of SDGs. So I also in the chat had indicated that we are already in the process of organizing the first Africa Women and Girls SDG Summit, where issues of climate change are going to come out strongly, and we have a theme on that. Welcome everybody, even outside Africa, to come and join us. So we are using such platforms to ensure that really every young person, every young woman participates in cooling down the global warming and general climate actions.
Thank you so much, Francis. So could you also introduce yourself? What is your role in the Youth Coalition?
Oh yeah, my name is Francis Mabiri. I am also a regional coordinator like Majo. Majo is regional coordinator for Central Uganda, and I'm regional coordinator for Eastern Uganda. Yeah, I think that is all.
Thank you. I can tell that Uganda is, that you are doing really well in Uganda in terms of both the youth engagement and also in the actual work of spreading awareness and of influencing policy and engaging the population all over the country, which is so spectacular. I would like to ask, apart from conferences like the Gender Conference, are you also working, what is the situation in neighboring countries? Are you able to work with youth coalitions or similar type of organizations in neighboring countries so that they can also have a similar level of engagement and activity?
Yes. Yeah. You go on.
Yes, I was going to say that other neighboring countries like Tanzania, like Kenya, like DRC Congo, you realize that we have come together as the East African community in one block, and the coalition is rallying upon all these East African member states to join hands, but also learn from each other. In In Uganda, starting from Monday up to the end of the week, we shall host the Africa Youth Peer Review Mechanism for young people. And the issue of climate change, we have a side event to making sure that very many young people are going to come from Africa, coming to Uganda for this event about the Africa Youth Peer Review Mechanism. So we are going to mobilize these young people from these countries, South Africa, Nigeria, Sudan, and all other countries to come together at our side event of climate action to push for action for climate empowerment, but also to push African member states to allocate more resources to climate adaptation. Adaptation is our thing, adaptation, but also mitigation. So yeah, this is how we want to really do this. But if Johan, you have a good experience on how best you can guide us to have a good impact, we will welcome your insights. But so far, that's how we have done that.
Amazing, thank you so much. Let me see, do we have any additional questions? So Alex, you had a comment. Would you mind sharing it? And maybe you have some question or other thought as well? Maybe you have difficulty unmuting. Okay, so Alex was sharing, after hearing the sharing from you all, it really shows how close and connected we are as global citizens. An act from the other side of the world could cause drastic changes in countries far away. We're in this together, and thanks you for taking action. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Okay, any other questions from our participants? Feel free to just unmute yourselves and ask, or to type in the chat, whichever is more convenient for you. Yeah, in that case, maybe we could just have the honor of having the other participants from Uganda. It would be great to see your faces if you have video or hear your voices. Angus, Nasasira, you. Oh, Alex, sorry, maybe you are not the person who had a question. A Lank is.
I did have a question, Johan.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Just struggle for a minute trying to get off mute. I was like, oh wait, I haven't done this in a hot minute. But thank you so much for coming to present with us. I want to ask really quick, so for other young people trying to get into this with you, what advice would you have for us?
Alex, come again. What's your question?
So for other young people trying to get in on the action with you, what advice would you have for us?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Alex. Like we said, next year, we are going to organize the first Africa Women and Girls SDG Summit. And we are calling upon all other people outside Africa to come and join. Like we are really benchmarking. We want to have Africa Asia, the first of ever Africa Asia SDG Summit, talking about issues of climate action, but also talking about issues of food systems and youth participation. So our president, our vice president, Mercy, she's on the line, and I want to take this opportunity to invite her if she has anything else to add on. Mercy?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nuruddin, for the lovely presentation, and of course, the other members of the coalition on here. The question that's just been asked in terms of for other young people, what can we do? We're open to engagement. We can always have online engagements for the start to relay strategies and how we can work together, because as young people, most of our challenges are not so different in the different countries. It could revolve around, leadership, advocacy, policy influencing, and, being part of the policy formulation team. So for us as young people across the globe to come together and identify means and how we can collaborate and make things work is something that is very possible, because we are open as a youth coalition for SDGs. As you have already seen, we are across the country. We have already had at least a few engagements with colleagues of ours from the other countries, and of course, looking forward to having more collaborations. The presentation, I would say, was elaborate enough, of course, highlighting the things that are here on ground. But of course, the biggest part is we noticed that not only Africa has 60% of arable land. Looking at Uganda, most of our population depends on agriculture, and any change in the climate affects agriculture. The question of the climate has also affected the question of human rights. Today, domestic violence is another consequence of the question of the climate. Here, I would say here in Uganda, most of the domestic work is being done by the women, while the men, of course, are expected to go out, go and look out for the money. And it has also affected education in a sense that you find that the female, the young girls in the homes have to go ahead to make sure the family is well taken care of in terms of go and collect firewood, make sure food is prepared. And if there's no food prepared, everyone is going to come back home to look at you. If there's no firewood, everyone is going to come back home to you. So in the end, you find that the question of the climate is something that we need to keep discussing. It is something that we need to relay strategies on. And I know that somewhere in the Philippines, agriculture is also being carried out. And I'm sure if that is the case, then we can identify local homegrown and made solutions to come up with means and how to address, to mitigate and adapt to the question of climate change. And we look forward to more online engagements, more collaborations, more relaying of strategies as young people across the globe to address not only the question of climate change, but the youth question in particular, in how we can involve in development and engage. Because it is one thing to have as part of the policy formulation, but how about the implementation? We know this from practice. You can get called for a meeting, discuss and say all these things, but when it comes to the implementation, nothing is being done according to how you agreed during the meeting. So beyond the formulations, how do we go ahead to implement in our different spaces? This is a conversation that we need to have as young people. Otherwise, thank you very much. My name is Mercy Melody Coyote. I'm the coalition's vice president, but also I support the UNDP in Uganda as a youth and innovation programs officer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mercy, and everybody for speaking. Definitely has been very eye-opening. Thank you for Johan facilitating. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you so much. Would it be possible to hear maybe from some of the other people from Uganda who are online? I think we have Kolpat, Hamilton, Helen Webaza. Let me see if I miss anyone. It would be great to maybe if you have video, you can turn it on. Otherwise, you can just unmute yourselves and we can hear your voices. And also, if you have anything that you would like to add.
Hi.
Okay.
My name is Kulpat Hamilton from Uganda. Thank you so much for having this meeting. I'm so glad to be a part of it. And I'm hoping that through this, we shall be able to reach other youths and inform them about climate change, because it's real, it's happening. And the earlier we curb it, the better. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kolpat. I think we had Helen. There was someone else who unmuted just at the same time.
No, I was only trying to say that Angus from our representative from Western Uganda is here. Angus is doing a lot with young girls, teenage girls. Angus, you want to share something?
Please do, Angus.
Good morning, but still I will say praise God. I'm a Christian. I would first want to thank the Lord for today, and then for Madhu and Nordin, what you have done. It's such an opportunity that we are connecting, as someone said, and there is nothing that will happen without us. To me, it's a call that everyone should get to know that climate is here for us, and we are here for it. Unless we join hands, regardless of where we stay, we shall not fight this. But if we join hands, we shall surely fight climate change. Majo spoke about corruption and everything in Uganda. I, being a representative from Western Uganda, I really know what is going around the lakes. I've seen people buy land. I've seen people do things that are not right. But it's right time that we get hands together and do a great work. May God bless us. Francis is speaking about everything, but may God bless us, see everything come to pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angus. And thank you so much, everyone from the Ugandan team. We are so grateful to have had you here today. Now we will continue with a break. But yeah, we'll definitely keep in touch, and let's see if we can maybe organize something together, some kind of exchange, or please let us know if you are planning to hold some conferences so we can join and our young participants here can join. Thank you again so much, everyone. Let's take a break and let us come back at 11:45. Thank you so much, everyone.